I just wanted to bring up a couple things that I mentioned in my last video that I think need to be clarified just for clarity's sake, because I looked back at it and I figured how people could misunderstand what I meant. Basically what I said is it makes sense for people to focus on problems that are specifically focused on their group. For example, if you belong into this group, then if there are issues that resolve in that, it makes sense that you'll be more concerned about it because it's more directly related to you. This is why, for example, Americans tend to not be so concerned about malaria that's going on in Africa, and we care more about breast cancer here because it affects our people. Even though the malaria over there is probably more deadly and easier to treat, it's not relevant to us directly. But there are a couple things that I wanted to point out. First off, this isn't an excuse to be against something. Like, if you're black, you're obviously going to be a supporter of black rights. You probably are. But it's not necessarily as relevant to white people because it's not a problem that they face. That's not an excuse to be opposed to them, though, or to fight for even further advancement of white power if you're within, like, the 18th century. I'm not saying that it gives you an excuse to be opposed to it or not care about it at all, because I do believe that everybody should be concerned about the problems that everyone faces. I just think it makes more sense that you're not going to be as concerned about that particular group. And if you're upset about the black versus white analogy, put it with Hispanic Americans. I mean, if you're black, you probably don't care too much about the struggles that Hispanics face in this country. You probably do somewhat, but it's not a huge concern to you personally because it doesn't affect you personally. And by that same token, the Hispanic Americans probably don't care that much about the struggles that African Americans go through. They probably do somewhat, but not the same degree as it affects them. And the second big thing, and I think I actually mentioned this, but I want to just clarify it, that if your group is in a position where it cannot help itself, where it cannot rally against the problems, then it is the duty of other people to help them. For example, if slavery is still going on in the country and it's oppressing the black people in this country, it's very hard for them to just fight that battle because they're the ones who are being fought against. Everything is against them. So it makes sense that white people or people who are in power are going to side with them and try and fight for their right because they're in a position where they can't. Another example of this could be for gay rights. I mean, it makes more sense, obviously, that gay people are going to be much more passionate about gay rights. I mean, I support gay rights, but I'm not gay myself, and I'm not really too involved with the LGBT advancement community. I don't really do anything with that. I just say that I'm fine with it, and I would vote for laws to support it. But you know, it's such a small demographic of society. They make up like 2 to 4% of society, I think. And if majority is going to vote against them in any way, I think it makes sense to defend them. It also works if it's a matter of poverty. Like, I do believe that in several instances, people are capable of fighting for themselves and bringing a better situation for themselves. But if you're in extreme poverty, like someone who's living in a third world country, it's not always within your ability to do that. So I do think that it's reasonable to expect people who have more wealth to help them out there. So those are two things I wanted to clarify, that A, it doesn't, just because you're not part of a group doesn't give you an excuse to fight against them, and B, if the group is in a position where they can't defend themselves, you should still defend them. But I do think that what I said still makes sense. And it wasn't necessarily arguing for anything, it's just arguing about how the way things work is logical. People are just going to care about what's within their sphere of influence because there's so many things you can care about. You have to pick something, or maybe just a few things that you intently focus on and dedicate your time to. So if it's something that's right in your face, like racism against black people or sexism against women, and it's a problem that directly afflicts you, it's in your face all the time, it makes sense that you're going to focus on it. And that's just my opinion on the matter. Just wanted to clear that up, though.